The FIA just rewrote the 2026 rulebook and several teams are already breaking it. Top engineers are panicking. Entire car concepts now risk getting banned before the season even starts. Disqualifications, point losses, and prize money penalties are officially in play. This isn't a rule tweak, it's a total crackdown. Subscribe now if you want the full story before the first team gets wiped off the grid. The first and most impactful change targets the MGUK deployment limit, capped now at a flat 4 megajoules per lap, with no tolerance margin. Previously, teams operated with a buffer zone to compensate for variable conditions like track elevation and battery state fluctuations. That buffer is now banned. What this means in real terms is that energy deployment must be dialed in with surgical precision. A single overrun in discharge, even for a split second, could trigger a regulatory breach and disqualification. Beyond energy caps, the FIA has reclassified override systems. These are the embedded control modes drivers use to activate strategic boosts, typically to defend or attack. Under the new rule, any override function must now be pre-logged, telemetry visible, and validated against real-time use. In short, every button push must now produce a traceable digital footprint. And if a team is found to have used a deployment strategy that isn't mapped correctly, the penalty won't be a fine. It will be loss of points, even retroactively. Another critical update affects active aerodynamics, specifically the integration of redundant safety systems. The FIA now mandates that all movable aero components must remain operational in the event of a primary system failure. This forces teams to install secondary actuators or passive fail-safe mechanisms, increasing the total weight and engineering complexity of the car. For teams like Aston Martin and Alpine, who were pursuing ultra-lightweight wing systems, this requirement could undo months of innovation. Then there's the issue of structural load thresholds, particularly in relation to the floor and front crash zones. Under the revised vertical flex test, the floor must now demonstrate rigidity under curb strike simulations equivalent to 250 km per hour. The implications here are serious. Several teams were designing ultra-thin floor edges to exploit ground effect more aggressively. Now, if those edges flex beyond the allowed tolerance, the car fails homologation and may not be cleared to race. One of the most technical but essential updates involves fuel flow behavior under thermal stress. The FIA has introduced new standards for how fuel injectors must behave during sudden temperature shifts, such as during safety car restarts or under mixed weather. Ferrari and Renault had both developed injector architectures that vary spray angles depending on heat load. Those systems may now fall outside the updated regulations unless they can prove consistent flow within a 3-degree thermal range. That's a high bar and not every manufacturer can meet it. Perhaps the most disruptive change is the real-time telemetry enforcement clause. Starting in 2026, every component that influences performance from brake bias to battery deployment must be continuously logged and cross-verified by FIA telemetry systems. This eliminates any possibility of temporary overrides or race-by-race gray zones. In the past, teams could exploit brief windows in the rules. Now, if your data doesn't match, your result doesn't count. This effectively weaponizes data compliance as a direct performance factor. All of these changes come with one underlying reality: there is no adjustment period. The FIA has confirmed that these rule updates take effect immediately for all ongoing 2026 development work. That includes CAD designs, wind tunnel models, and even supplier component approvals. What was legal yesterday might be illegal today. And if a team misses one clause in a 1,000-page regulation, the result could be a disqualified chassis, millions wasted, and a season derailed before it even begins. The moment the FIA's enforcement bulletin landed, technical directors across the paddock knew they were in trouble. This wasn't just an update, it was a system-wide reset. Development timelines that had been carefully mapped out over the last 18 months became obsolete within hours. Teams had locked in supplier orders, aerodynamic layouts, hybrid architecture. Now, all of it must be re-evaluated under a revised set of parameters with no room for flexibility. The message was clear: comply or don't race. For power unit engineers, the most immediate crisis involves remapping energy systems. MGUK deployment, inverter response, and battery discharge protocols all fall under the new hard cap. The challenge? These systems were calibrated with built-in tolerances that no longer exist. Thermal spikes, Reagan mismatches, and circuit-specific boost strategies must now be re-engineered to fall precisely within the new 4 megajoule ceiling. And this isn't just a software patch. It's a full system rebuild that affects cooling layouts, packaging, and weight balance. Aero departments are under equal pressure. The new mandate for redundant fail-safe mechanisms in all movable aerodynamic parts has turned every active system into a compliance puzzle. Rear wings, front flaps, and diffuser ducts must now operate through dual pathways primary and backup without increasing instability or breaking weight distribution models. Teams that had spent months refining low-drag solutions now face the irony of adding mechanical weight to meet safety standards, thereby losing the very advantage they were chasing. Even the chassis departments are facing sudden threats. Floor stiffness testing has been redefined with a new vertical force profile, designed to simulate more violent curb strikes. This means that composite blends, sandwich cores, and even resin behavior under extreme flex loads must be validated again. For teams that were experimenting with ultra-thin edge designs to push ground effect deeper into the performance window, those concepts are now legally fragile. If the floor flexes by a few millimeters too much, the car gets banned. The telemetry teams are facing an entirely new kind of warfare: software transparency under surveillance. Every override, torque map adjustment, or drag reduction input must now be traceable in real time, not only by the team's internal systems, but by the FIA's own compliance mirror. This demands full re-engineering of control logic, with built-in safeguards and tamper-proof telemetry outputs. For the first time in F1 history, a car's legality depends as much on its coding discipline as its aerodynamic performance. Smaller teams are at even greater risk. While factory giants like Mercedes and Ferrari can throw additional resources into validation, outfits like Haas, Sauber, and even AlphaTauri have to choose: redesign with limited budget, or try to stretch legality to the absolute edge and hope nothing gets flagged. The new enforcement climate punishes both underperformance and overspending. In this game, failing to comply doesn't just cost points, it could cost survival. The bottom line is this: the FIA's 2026 enforcement isn't about catching cheaters, it's about forcing engineering departments into a new mode of thinking. Risk-tolerant design strategies are no longer viable. Everything must be bulletproof, redundant, and auditable in real time. The car is no longer just a machine. It's a legal document written in carbon, silicon, and telemetry, and any error in that language could mean losing the right to compete at all. The technical updates alone would be enough to shake the grid, but it's the penalty structure that's truly changing the game. The FIA has confirmed that breaches of the 2026 regulations will not be treated as internal errors or engineering gray zones. They will be punished with full race disqualifications, points deductions, and financial sanctions, even if those breaches are discovered weeks after the checkered flag has fallen. That shifts the risk from mechanical failure to regulatory failure, and the consequences are immediate. Imagine this: a team crosses the line P2 in Melbourne, celebrates a double podium, and earns 18 crucial points. But 2 weeks later, post-race data analysis reveals that their override system didn't trigger a secondary actuator during a DRS deployment. The car functioned perfectly, but the system wasn't compliant. Under the new framework, the result is invalidated. Points lost. Constructors' standings reshuffled. And the team's championship trajectory is thrown off course before round 2. Teams are now being forced to audit not only their hardware, but their entire software chain of custody. Every line of code used to control hybrid deployment, aero activation, and energy management must now be reviewed, hashed, and submitted. Any update, even a small optimization mid-season, must be resubmitted for certification. If a team skips this step, even by accident, the FIA has the power to ban the car from competition. This isn't theoretical. It's written into the 2026 Technical Governance Agreement. The drama becomes even more real when we consider development calendars. Several teams had already completed their early season component validation based on the prior rules. Those components are now at risk of rejection. There is no pause button. No extended window. The FIA expects all new designs to conform immediately. Teams like Red Bull and McLaren, who operate with aggressive timelines and early wind tunnel integration, now face the logistical nightmare of revalidating hundreds of components before the first rollout. And then there's the psychological pressure. Engineers, already working under one of the most intense design cycles in modern F1 history, are now being told that a compliance slip, not a crash, not a power loss, not a fuel miscalculation, could be the reason their car fails to start a race. That pressure filters through the entire organization. From simulation engineers to powertrain analysts to race strategists. Every department is now a regulatory risk center. Team principals have started pushing back. Quietly, behind closed doors, they're asking for grace periods, temporary exemptions, or phased implementation. But so far, the FIA is holding firm. No extensions. No leniency. The official position is that the updated rules were always part of the broader 2026 roadmap and that all teams were given fair warning. But inside the paddock, the tone is different. The sense is that this is less about fairness and more about control. What we're witnessing is not just a regulation update. It's a philosophical shift. The FIA isn't just governing the sport, it's engineering the behavior of its participants. Every design choice, every performance gain, every bit of innovation is now filtered through one question: is this legal enough to survive the season? That question, more than any wind tunnel number or CFD breakthrough, will define who wins in 2026.